The event was everything Kang Tech had promised it would be: 300 guests. A venue in Gangnam that had been booked 6 months in advance. Servers moving through the crowd with the practiced efficiency of people who understood that at events like this one, the details were the message. The kind of night that the Seoul tech industry would be talking about for the next 2 weeks minimum. Nadia Brooks had been to 100 events like this one. She was standing at the bar in a dress that had cost more than most people's monthly rent, and wearing it the way she wore everything. Like it was just what she had put on, like she hadn't thought about it, like the thinking had happened so far upstream that by the time it arrived on her body it looked effortless. She had a drink in her hand, and she was having a quiet moment between conversations because she had been approached 4 times in the last hour, and she was an introvert who had learned to perform extroversion well enough to make a career out of rooms full of people. She was not looking for trouble. Trouble found her anyway. New here. Subscribe right now and hit the bell. This story starts with a mistake that someone is going to spend a long time regretting. Let's go. The woman who approached her was polished in the way of someone who had decided that polish was a form of armor and had been putting it on every morning for years. Seo Yaren, Yi-won's girlfriend of 8 months. She looked at Nadia the way certain women looked at other women in certain rooms. The fast assessment, the conclusion drawn before a word was said. She had drawn the wrong conclusion. "Excuse me," Yaren said, warmly. The warmth of someone who was about to say something that wasn't warm. "I think you might be in the wrong section. This area is reserved for Kang Tech partners and invited guests." Nadia looked at her. "I know," she said. "There's a general admission area near the back," Yaren said. "The staff can show you if you're not sure where." "I'm fine," Nadia said. "Thank you." She turned back to her drink. Yaren stood there for a moment. She was not accustomed to being turned away from. She was accustomed to redirecting people and having those people be redirected. She tried again, slightly less warmth this time, slightly more clarity about what she was communicating. "I don't think you understand," she said. "This isn't general admission. These are people who have a relationship with the company." Nadia set her glass down, turned around slowly. "A relationship with the company," she said. "Yes," Yaren said. "So if you could just—" "Events like this aren't really for everyone," Yaren said, slightly louder now. The way people got slightly louder when they wanted the people around them to understand that something was being managed. "I'm sure you understand." The bar area was quiet, not empty. There were 8, maybe 10 people within easy hearing distance. All of them had just heard that. All of them were now doing the thing people did when they had witnessed something, looking elsewhere with the specific intensity of people who were paying close attention. Nadia looked at Yaren for a long moment. Then she smiled, not warmly. The smile of someone who had just received information they were going to do something deliberate with. "Right," she said. "Not everyone belongs here." She picked up her drink, finished it, set the glass down on the bar with the careful precision of someone who was not going to give this moment anything more than it deserved. Then she picked up her bag and walked, not toward the exit, toward the main hall, toward the heart of the event. Yaren watched her go with the satisfied expression of someone who thought they had handled something. A man at the bar, mid-40s, the kind of quiet that came from having been in important rooms for a long time, watched Nadia walk away and then looked at Yaren. "Do you know who that was?" he said. "Someone who got turned around," Yaren said. He looked at her for a moment. "That was Nadia Brooks," he said. Yaren looked at him. The name meant nothing to her yet. And he picked up his drink. "You should look her up," he said, and walked away. Yaren frowned, pulled out her phone, typed the name. The results loaded. She stared at the screen. 7 years ago, Kang Tech was not the company in this room tonight. 7 years ago, it was a startup that had burned through 2 rounds of funding and missed 2 consecutive product launch windows, and was 6 weeks from having to tell its employees that there was no more company. Yi-won had been in 37 investor meetings in 4 months and had received 37 versions of the same answer. Too risky, too late, too much money needed to fix too many problems. He had stopped sleeping properly, had stopped eating properly, had been running on the specific fuel of someone who believed in what they had built and could not understand why nobody else could see it. Nadia had been in Seoul for a conference. Not his conference, a separate one. A venture capital summit that had brought her over from Atlanta for 5 days. She had heard about Kang Tech through a contact at a dinner on the 3rd evening. had gone back to her hotel and spent the next 6 hours reading everything publicly available about the company. Then she had requested a meeting. Yiwon had taken the meeting not because he was optimistic. He had stopped being optimistic somewhere around investor meeting 22. But because you took every meeting when you were 6 weeks from closing. She had walked into that meeting and done something none of the previous 37 investors had done. She had talked about the product like she understood it, not the financials, the product. What it actually did, what problem it actually solved, what the market actually looked like for something like this in 3 years when the infrastructure caught up with the vision. She talked about it the way someone talked about something they had spent 6 hours understanding rather than 6 minutes skimming. He had sat across from her and felt something he had not felt in 4 months, like someone could see it, like someone else could actually see what he had been building and understood why it mattered. She had given him her terms at the end of the meeting. She wasn't taking a fee. She was taking shares, 49%. He had 24 hours to decide. He called back in 4. What she brought was not just the capital. It was the credibility. One investor seeing something that 37 had missed made other investors look again. Within 6 weeks, 2 more had come in on smaller terms. Within a year, the product launched successfully. Within 3 years, the company was profitable. Within 5, it was the kind of company that held galas like this one with 300 guests and servers moving through the crowd. She had never been to one before tonight. She had never asked to be. She had taken her 49% and gone back to Atlanta and watched from a distance the way serious investors watched things. Through the numbers, through the quarterly reports, through the calls with Yiwon that were always professional and always had something else underneath them that neither of them ever directly addressed. She had come tonight because he had invited her, because the product was genuinely excellent and she had wanted to see the launch. Because 7 years was a long time to own 49% of something and never stand in the building. She had not come to get redirected from a bar by a woman who didn't know her name. Yiwon Kang was on the other side of the venue when it happened. He was in a conversation with 3 industry contacts, the kind of conversation that was half business and half performance, the specific dance of successful people at their own events making sure the right people felt seen. He was good at this. He had learned to be good at this because the alternative was being bad at it, and he had never been willing to be bad at things. He didn't know about the bar. Not yet. He had seen Nadia arrive, had spotted her across the room at the beginning of the evening, and had felt the thing he always felt when she was in the same physical space as him. The thing he had been feeling for 7 years, and had been managing for 7 years with the specific discipline of a man who had decided that discipline was the responsible choice. He had told himself this so many times it had started to feel true. It wasn't true. He knew it wasn't true. He had known for years. He had started seeing Yaren 8 months ago because he had gotten tired of responsible and had chosen someone who didn't complicate anything. Someone who existed entirely in the present tense. Someone who didn't make him feel the thing he felt when Nadia walked into a room. He had thought this was wisdom. He was going to find out tonight that it was avoidance wearing wisdom's clothes. Across the venue, Nadia was talking to a group of people who had come to find her after the bar. Word traveled at these events, not loudly, just steadily, the way information moved through rooms full of people who paid attention to information. She was talking about the product, asking questions that demonstrated she understood it at a level that most people in the room, people who worked there, didn't fully match. She was not thinking about the bar anymore. She was not thinking about Yaren. She had put both of those things in a specific location in her mind where she kept things she was going to deal with deliberately rather than reactively. She was thinking about what she was going to say when she got on that stage, because she had made a decision. Quietly, in the 30 seconds between Yaren's last sentence and her own smile, 7 years of being the 49% nobody mentioned was enough. Tonight they were going to mention it. She found the event coordinator near the side entrance to the main hall. The coordinator's name was Park Jae-hyun, and she had been running Kang Tech events for 4 years, and knew every name on every guest list and shareholder document the company had ever produced. When Nadia introduced herself, Park Jae-hyun's expression did the thing that expressions did when someone received information that rearranged their understanding of a situation. "Ms. Brooks," she said. "Of course, I recognized you from I apologize. I should have introduced myself when you arrived. You didn't know I was coming, Nadia said. He invited me last minute. I didn't RSVP properly. She paused. I'd like to say a few words tonight, during the closing remarks. 5 minutes. Park Jae-hyun looked at her. Of course, she said. Absolutely. Let me adjust the program. Thank you, Nadia said. 5 minutes is all I need. She went to find her seat 3 tables from the front. She sat down and looked at the stage and thought about 7 years ago and a Thursday morning call and a decision that everyone in her office had told her was the worst one she had ever made. She thought about what she had seen in that meeting. In him, she was about to let the room see what she had seen. Yaren was at a table nearby. Nadia didn't look at her. She was not doing this for Yaren. She was doing this for herself, for the 7 years of 49% that had never stood in this building before tonight. The program began. The keynote was excellent. Yi-won on stage was the version of himself that the public got: polished, articulate, capable of making technical concepts feel urgent and accessible simultaneously. She watched him and thought about the man in that meeting room 7 years ago who had looked at her like someone who could finally see what he had been building. Both versions were real. She had always known that. The product demonstration landed exactly as it was designed to. The audience responded the way audiences responded when something was genuinely good, not the polite applause of people being appropriately appreciative, but the louder, more spontaneous response of people who were actually impressed. She was proud of it. She had always been proud of it. She had never said that out loud in this building before tonight. Then the MC stepped back to the microphone. Before we close the evening, he said, we have one final speaker. Someone who has been part of this company's story since the very beginning, since before most of the people in this room knew this company existed. Ladies and gentlemen, Nadia Brooks, co-founder and 49% shareholder of Kang Tech. The room did what rooms did when information arrived that restructured their understanding of everything that had come before it. Yaren went completely still at her table. Nadia walked to the stage. This story is doing exactly what it's supposed to. Hit that like button right now if you're feeling every second of this. Let's keep going. She stood at the podium and looked at the room. 300 people. The Seoul tech industry's most significant gathering of the year. All of them looking at her with the recalibrated attention of people who had just received new information and were processing it in real time. She didn't mention the bar. She didn't mention Yaren. She was not that kind of woman, had never needed to humiliate anyone to make her point because her point had always been capable of making itself. She talked about 7 years ago, about a Thursday morning and a 48-hour due diligence process, and a decision that her colleagues in Atlanta had called the worst of her career. She talked about the product, what she had seen in it then, sitting in a meeting room with a man who hadn't slept properly in weeks, and what she was seeing now, watching it land in a room full of 300 people who understood exactly what it was. She talked about belief. About the specific kind of courage it took to see something before it was obvious. About the fact that the most significant investments she had ever made were the ones that looked nothing like investments at the time they were made. She talked about what it meant to build something real, the unglamorous version, the version that existed before the galas and the product launches and the 300 guests. The version that was 6 weeks from closing and 37 investor rejections deep and running on the belief of a man who could not understand why nobody else could see what he had built. She talked for 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Then she thanked the team, said the product was everything she had believed it would be 7 years ago, stepped back from the podium. The applause was not polite. It was the kind that arrived fast and stayed. She walked off the stage and back toward her seat and did not look at Yaren's table. The man from the bar caught her eye as she passed. He raised his glass slightly. She kept walking. Yi-won was watching her from the side of the room. He had been watching her since the MC said her name. Had felt the specific thing he felt every time she was in the same physical space as him, amplified tonight, significantly amplified, because he was watching the room see her the way he had seen her for 7 years, and the gap between what he felt and what he had been doing about it had never felt wider. He also had his phone in his hand. Someone had texted him 3 minutes before she got on stage. The man from the bar. 3 sentences about what had happened near the coat check at the beginning of the evening. Who said what? How loud it was? Who heard it? He read it twice. He looked at Yaren's table. He looked at Nadia stepping off the stage. He excused himself from the people around him and went to find her. She was at the coat check when he found her, bag on her shoulder, coat in her hand. The posture of a woman who had done what she came to do and was ready to leave. She saw him coming across the lobby and did not stop moving, took her coat from the attendant, thanked him, turned toward the exit. Nadia, event, she said without turning. The product demo was excellent. You should be proud of the team. Stop, he said. She stopped, turned. He looked like a man who had been holding something for the last 20 minutes and had run out of room to keep holding it. She recognized the expression, had seen versions of it across meeting tables and on the other end of video calls, and once at an airport in Atlanta when he had walked her to her gate and they had said goodbye the way they always said goodbye, which was carefully, and with everything underneath it remaining underneath it. I know what happened at the bar, he said. Then you don't need me to explain it, she said. I need to apologize, he said. You didn't do it, she said. Someone I brought into my life did it, he said. At my event, to you, in front of people. He paused. That's not nothing. She looked at him steadily. No, she said, it's not nothing. Sorry, he said. Genuinely not the managed version. I'm actually sorry. I know, she said. Yi-won, I've always been able to tell the difference with you. She held his gaze. That's not actually what I'm thinking about right now. What are you thinking about? She was quiet for a moment. Around them, the coat check was moving, other guests collecting things, staff moving efficiently, the end-of-evening logistics of a large event. None of it was paying attention to this specific conversation. I'm thinking about the fact that I have owned 49% of this company for 7 years, she said. And tonight was the first time I've been in this building. He was quiet. I'm thinking about why that is, she said. Because it's not the distance. Atlanta is far, but planes exist, and you know that. It's not the business has been fine, the numbers have been good, there was no professional reason for me not to be here. So I keep coming back to the same question. She looked at him. Why has it taken 7 years and a woman who didn't know my name to get me on a stage in your building? He looked at the floor for a moment, then at her. Because I didn't know how to have you here without it meaning something, he said, and I wasn't ready to deal with what it meant. Coat check attendant was very interested in a spot on the counter nearby. Nadia looked at Yi-won. That's the most honest thing you've said to me in 7 years, she said. I know, he said. Say the rest of it, she said. He looked at her. I have feelings for you, he said. I have had feelings for you since that meeting room 7 years ago. You walked in and talked about my product like you actually understood it, and I have been very disciplined about not acting on it and very bad at understanding why I was being disciplined. Were you? She said. Because you saved my company, he said. And I didn't want you to ever think that what I felt was connected to that. I didn't want it to look like gratitude wearing a different face. She was quiet. And because, he said, if I said it and it went wrong, if you didn't feel the same way or it complicated the business or it changed what we had, I would lose you. And losing you from my life entirely felt worse than having you in it at a distance. So you chose the distance, she said. Yes, he said. For 7 years, Yaren, she said. He looked at the floor again. Was what happened when I convinced myself that moving on was the responsible thing to do. He paused. I chose wrong. She stood with her coat in her hand and looked at the man who had called her back in 4 hours 7 years ago and had been in her professional life and her peripheral personal life ever since and had apparently been carrying something the entire time. What do you want, Yi-won? She said. I want to stop choosing distance, he said. I want to stop being disciplined about the wrong things. I want to do this properly, if you'll let me. We are deep inside this story and it keeps escalating. Hit that like button right now. Let's keep going. She was quiet for a long moment. I'm going back to Atlanta tomorrow, she said. I know, he said. I have a life there, she said. A business, employees who depend on me. I'm not restructuring any of that based on one conversation in a coat check. I'm not asking you to, he said. Then what are you asking? I'm asking for a chance, he said. To show you that this is real, not just tonight. Not just because of what happened at the bar and I'm feeling guilty and you just got on a stage and reminded the entire room who you are. He held her gaze. I have felt this for 7 years. Tonight just ran out of room to keep it inside. She looked at him. You have things to handle, she said. Yaren, That conversation needs to happen, and it needs to happen honestly, not managed, not version of events, the actual truth. I'm not going to be anyone's overlap. I know, he said. I'll handle it before you call me, she said. Not after, before, he said. Ye one. She looked at him steadily. You get one chance, she said. I don't give second ones, I never have. I know, he said. I'm not going to need a second one. She held his gaze for one more moment, reading him the way she had always read him, the way she had read him in that meeting room 7 years ago when she had decided in 48 hours what 37 other investors had decided in seconds. Her read of him had been right then. She trusted her read now. Handle your business, she said. Then call me. She walked out. Yaren was still at her table when Yi Won came back into the main hall. The event was winding down, guests collecting their things, conversations wrapping up, the natural dissolution of a large gathering that had run its course. She was on her phone. She looked up when she saw him coming and put the phone away and started to say something about the speech, about how it was a surprise, about how she hadn't known there was going to be an additional speaker, about how. I know what happened at the bar, he said. She went still. I know what you said to her, he said, and I know how loud you said it. Yi Won, she is a co-founder of this company, he said. His voice was not raised. It was the specific quiet of someone who had gone past the point where volume was necessary. She has owned 49% of everything I have built for 7 years. She was at this event because I invited her. She was at that bar because she belongs there more than anyone else in this building. Yaren was quiet. I should have told you about her, he said. About who she was and what she meant to this company. That's on me. But what you said, the way you said it, I need you to understand that there is no version of that was okay. I didn't know, Yaren said. I know you didn't know, he said. That's what I'm telling you, you didn't know because you didn't ask. You looked at a woman at a bar and decided who she was in about 10 seconds and acted on that decision in front of people. He paused. That tells me something. She looked at him. What does it tell you? He was quiet for a moment. That we've been telling each other what we want to hear, he said, for 8 months, and I think we both know that. Her jaw tightened. Is this about her? This is about us, he said, and the fact that this isn't working, and that I should have said that before tonight instead of after. You're ending this, she said. I'm being honest, he said, which I should have been earlier. She looked at him for a long moment. The performance of composure she wore so well was doing something complicated, holding but barely, the specific expression of someone who had been caught off guard in a way they were not going to let become visible. Fine, she said, quietly. With the specific dignity of someone choosing how to exit a situation, she stood, picked up her clutch. What it's worth, she said at the door. I would have Googled her if I'd known her name. I know, he said. That's the part I should have handled differently. She left. He stood in the emptying hall for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone. Nadia was in the cab on the way to her hotel when his message arrived. She had been looking out the window at Seoul going past, the city at night, lit and moving and entirely indifferent to what had just happened in one building inside it. She had been thinking about the speech, about the applause, about the fact that she had been 49% of something for 7 years, and tonight was the first time she had felt the full weight of what that meant. She had also been thinking about the coat check, about what he had said, about the way he had said it, not managed, not the version he prepared for rooms full of people, the actual version, the one that had been sitting underneath 7 years of professional distance. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. I handled it. Tonight. Not tomorrow. She read it twice. Put the phone face down on the seat beside her. Looked out the window. Seoul was doing its usual thing, enormous and lit and completely unbothered. She had always liked cities at night. There was something about the specific energy of a city after dark that felt honest. All the performance of the day stripped away, just the city being itself. She picked up her phone again, looked at his message one more time. Then she opened a new message and typed, I know. I could tell you would. She sent it. Put the phone back down. 3 minutes passed. Then how did you know? She smiled at the window. Typed back, same way I knew 7 years ago. I read rooms, I read people, I've always been able to read you. His response took slightly longer this time. She waited. The cab moved through the city. Seoul at night, going past the window frame by frame. Then, what did you read tonight? She sat with that question for a moment. A man who ran out of room, she typed, and was honest about it, which counts for something. Another pause. Just something. She looked at the message. At the city outside the window. At the card he had given her 6 years ago with his personal number on it. She still had it somewhere, had never needed it because he had given her his personal number before she asked, and thought about 7 years of calls and quarterly reports and airport goodbyes that had always had something underneath them that neither of them had named. She typed, "Call me when you're back in Atlanta." His response was immediate. "When are you next in Seoul?" She almost laughed. "Call me," she sent. "We'll figure it out." She put the phone in her bag, looked out the window. The city went past. Seoul at night. A city she had flown into for one evening and was flying out of tomorrow, and had managed to leave something in anyway, not just on a stage, not just in a coat check, but somewhere more permanent than either of those. She had always been right about the investments that looked least like investments at the time. She was going to find out if she was right about this one. Atlanta received her the way it always did, familiar and loud and entirely itself. The specific energy of a city that had never needed to perform for anyone and didn't intend to start. She landed at 10 in the morning, took a cab home, dropped her bag inside the door of her apartment, and stood in her own kitchen making coffee and feeling the specific sensation of someone who had left one version of their life in Seoul and come back to another one in Atlanta and wasn't sure yet how to hold both simultaneously. She was fine with not being sure yet. She had always been better at sitting with uncertainty than most people she knew. It was one of the things that made her good at what she did, the ability to hold a situation without forcing it to resolve before it was ready. She made her coffee, sat at her kitchen table, opened her laptop. The first email in her inbox was from a journalist at a Seoul business publication who had been at the gala and wanted to know if she was available for a profile. The second was from a venture firm she had met with twice, suddenly very interested in setting up a third meeting. The third was from the man from the bar, who turned out to be a senior director at a company she had been watching for 2 years, saying simply, "Last night confirmed what I suspected. Let's talk when you're ready." 7 years of being the 49% nobody talked about. One speech. She sipped her coffee and felt something she was going to allow herself to feel without analyzing it too hard. The specific satisfaction of a woman who had made a decision and had it turn out to be exactly right. Her phone was on the table. It did not have a message from Yi-won yet. She had told him to call. She had not told him when. She was not going to sit and watch her phone. She had a business to run and emails to answer and a life that had been operating before Seoul and would continue operating after it. She closed the journalist's email, opened the venture firm's, started typing. He called on a Wednesday, 4 days after she got home. She was in a meeting when the call came through, saw his name on her screen, let it go to voicemail, finished the meeting, called him back from her office with the door closed. He picked up on the first ring. "You let it go to voicemail," he said. "I was in a meeting," she said. "You could have stepped out," he said. "I could have," she said. "I didn't." A pause. She could hear him deciding whether to push that and deciding not to. "How was the flight?" "Fine," she said. 14 hours is 14 hours. "How's Atlanta?" "Atlanta is Atlanta," she said. "How's Seoul?" "Quieter than Saturday," he said, "which is both good and not good." "What's not good about it?" "I keep thinking about things I should have said differently," he said, "or said earlier, or said at all." She swiveled her chair to face the window. Atlanta below her, the city going about its Wednesday with complete indifference to this phone call. "Like what?" she said. "Like I should have told you what I felt 4 years ago," he said. "When it was already obvious to me. I kept finding reasons not to, and none of them were actually good reasons, they were just reasons." "What were they?" "The business," he said. "The distance. The fear that I would say it and change something that was working and lose both things instead of gaining one." "That's not an unreasonable fear," she said. "No," he said. "But it kept me from something real for 4 years. That part I regret." She was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, Atlanta was doing its Wednesday thing: traffic, sky, the particular quality of a southern city in the morning. She had built her life in this view. She liked this view. "Yi-won," she said. "Yes." "What does this actually look like?" she said. "Practically, you're in Seoul, I'm in Atlanta. We both have companies that require us to be in those places. So what are you actually proposing?" "I'm proposing," he said, "that we stop pretending the distance is the obstacle. The distance is logistics. Logistics are solvable." "You make it sound simple," she said. "It's not simple," he said. "But it's not as complicated as I've been making it for 7 years." She smiled at the window. "You're going to have to do better than a phone call," she said. I know, he said. That's why I'm coming to Atlanta. She turned from the window. When? Friday, he said. If that works, she looked at her calendar. Friday works, she said. Good, he said. Ye won. This is not me saying yes to everything, she said. This is me giving you the chance you asked for. There's a difference. I know the difference, he said. I'll take it. This story keeps building and we are not done yet. Subscribe right now if you haven't already and hit that bell. Let's finish this. He landed on Friday morning. She had not rearranged her day for him. She had told him she had meetings until 2 and he had said that was fine, and she had told him she would send him a restaurant and he had said he would be there. He was there when she arrived. Already seated, which meant he had been early, had come from wherever he was staying and had arrived at the restaurant before her specifically so that she would not be the one waiting. She noticed that. She sat across from him and looked at him in Atlanta, in her city, in the restaurant she had chosen, in the Wednesday afternoon light that was different from Soul's and different from the gala and different from every version of him she had seen before. This was the version of Yi One that existed without the event around him, without the industry context, without 300 guests and a keynote and a stage. Just a man who had flown 14 hours because she had said Friday works. You came, she said. You said Friday works, he said. Half expected you to send a representative, she said. I considered it, he said. Decided against. Why? Because sending a representative to have a conversation I should have had 4 years ago seemed like exactly the kind of thing that got me into this situation in the first place, he said. She almost smiled. Fair, she said. They ordered. And then they talked the real kind, the kind that had always existed between them in the gaps between the professional version, but had never had its own dedicated space before. She asked him about the company, not the metrics, the actual experience of it. What it felt like now compared to 7 years ago. What he had lost in the building of it, and what he hadn't expected to lose. He talked about it honestly. About the years where growth had required decisions he hadn't been comfortable with. About the specific loneliness of being the person everyone else looked to for certainty when certainty was not something he had in ready supply. About the fact that the gala on Saturday, which should have felt like a peak moment, had felt like something was missing from it until she got on that stage. What was missing? She said. Someone who knew what it actually cost, he said. Everyone in that room knew what it was worth. You were the only one who knew what it cost. She held that. I've always known, she said. I know, he said. That's the part I kept to myself when I should have said it out loud. You're saying it now, she said. Better late than never, he said. Jury's still out on that, she said. I know, he said. That's why I'm here. She looked at him across the table. At the man who had called her back in 4 hours when 24 was the deadline. Who had built something real from the ruins of almost nothing. Who had been feeling something for 7 years and had chosen discipline over honesty and was now sitting in her city on a Friday afternoon trying to correct the math. Tell me about Yaren, she said. He looked at her. What do you want to know? Was it real? She said. Any of it. He was quiet for a moment. Was real in the way that things were real when you chose them for the wrong reason, he said. The choosing was real. The reason was wrong. What was the wrong reason? I was trying to move on, he said. From something I hadn't fully accepted I wasn't over. Me, she said. You, he said. She looked at him steadily. That's not fair to her, she said. No, he said. It wasn't, I know that. I handled the ending honestly, told her the truth about why it wasn't working. She didn't deserve less than that. What did she say? That she had known something was off, he said. That she had been waiting for me to figure it out. Sounds smarter than Saturday suggested, Nadia said. Most people are smarter than their worst moment, he said. She looked at him. Including you, she said. Including me, he said. I hope. They ate. The conversation moved the way conversations moved when two people had years of accumulated things to say and had finally found the space to say them. Not linearly, not tidally, but with the specific richness of something that had been waiting a long time to happen. She told him about the emails she had received since the gala, about the journalist and the venture firm and the senior director from the bar. About the fact that one speech had done more for her public profile than 7 years of being quietly excellent had managed. You were never going to be loudly excellent, he said. That's not who you are, she said. But maybe I was too quiet for too long. Changed Saturday, he said. She looked at him. A woman who didn't know my name told me I didn't belong there, she said. And I decided that enough was enough. I'm glad you decided that, he said. I'm glad too, she said. Even if the reason for it was infuriating. I'm going to apologize for that again, he said. You don't have to, she said. You weren't there, and honestly, she paused, she did me a favor. I would never have gotten on that stage without someone giving me a reason. You didn't need a reason, he said. You needed permission, she looked at him. What do you mean? You gave yourself permission Saturday, he said. The reason was incidental. You had been 49% for 7 years and you had never claimed it publicly, and that was your choice. I respected it. I always respected it. But you were always going to claim it eventually. She just accelerated the timeline. She sat with that. You might be right, she said. I'm right occasionally, he said. It happens, she laughed. He watched it happen with the expression she remembered from the coat check, the one that had something in it she was going to keep examining. They stayed for 3 hours. Nobody checked the time. He was in Atlanta for the weekend. Not staying with her, he had a hotel, had been clear about that, had not assumed anything about what Friday meant beyond Friday. She appreciated that more than she said. On Saturday, he asked if she wanted to show him the city. She said yes. They walked through neighborhoods she had been walking through her whole life, not the tourist version, the real one, the version that existed for the people who lived there. He asked questions that proved he was actually interested in the answers. She told him things about Atlanta she had never thought to tell anyone because most people who came from elsewhere weren't curious about the right things. He was curious about the right things. On Saturday evening, they were sitting on the steps outside her building, her idea, because the evening was warm and she had always thought better outside, when he said, I want to do this properly. You keep saying that, she said. I keep meaning it, he said. What does properly look like to you, she said. Specifically, he turned to look at her. It looks like not hiding it, he said. Not keeping it in a category marked professional distance because I'm afraid of what happens if it doesn't work. It looks like, he paused, being as honest with you as you have always been with me. I haven't always been honest, she said. I've felt things I didn't say. What things? He said. She looked at the street in front of them. At Atlanta on a Saturday evening, warm and lit and moving slowly. I knew, she said. About what you felt, I've known for a long time. I told myself it was professional and I kept it there because the alternative was complicated and I don't like complicated unless the return justifies it, he said. And I've been running the numbers for 7 years, she said. The return justifies it, he looked at her. Not saying yes to everything, she said. I told you that, I meant it. There's going to be distance and logistics and figuring out, and I'm not doing any of it fast. I know, he said. But I'm saying yes to finding out, she said. Yes to this, whatever this is. He held her gaze. Something in his face that had been held carefully for 7 years finally arrived without being pulled back. That's enough, he said. That's more than enough. They sat on the steps of her building in Atlanta and watched the evening move and did not say anything for a while. The city went about its business around them. Unhurried, warm. It was the most comfortable silence she had sat in for a long time.
This is the end of part 1. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Let's get this video to 200 likes for part 2. Also, don't forget to subscribe and comment where you're watching us from.